Okay, get this. Imagine finding a guide to joy, but it was written from a prison cell. I know, it sounds completely backwards, right? But that is the absolutely radical message at the heart of one of the most famous letters ever written, the book of Philippians.
I mean, it's a question we all ask ourselves, isn't it? Where does real joy actually come from? Is it about having the perfect life, great circumstances, being comfortable, ticking off all our achievements?
Well, believe it or not, a letter that's 2,000 years old, written under pretty much the worst conditions you can imagine, claims to have a profound and timeless answer to that very question.
So to really get that answer, we first have to wrap our minds around the incredible paradox that's right at the center of this letter. So normally, when you think of joy, you're thinking freedom, success, good times. But this letter, it's just overflowing with joy, and it was written in a Roman prison cell around 62 AD. I mean, the author wasn't on some retreat. He was literally in chains, facing a totally uncertain future, and possibly even death. And yet, get this, in just 4 short chapters, the words joy or rejoice pop up more than 15 times. This isn't just a casual mention, it's a relentless, almost defiant theme. So what on earth was going on?
To figure that out, we've got to meet the man who wrote it and the people he was writing to.
So the author is the Apostle Paul. He's writing this somewhere around 60 to 62 AD while he's imprisoned in Rome. And he's sending it to a church he absolutely loved in a city called Philippi, which was a Roman colony back then. This was no stuffy theological document. It was a deeply personal letter.
And the community he was writing to? They weren't exactly the rich and powerful. Its very first members were this diverse, kind of unlikely crew. A successful businesswoman named Lydia, a young slave girl who had been freed from demonic possession, and the Roman jailer who had actually locked Paul up, him and his whole family. These people were his partners, and you can feel his deep affection for them in every single line.
All right, let's dive into the core of the letter and see how Paul's math works. What was his actual equation for joy?
Okay, this verse right here is the absolute key to the whole thing. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. What Paul did was basically simplify his entire life, his whole existence, down to just one single purpose. Think about it. If he lived, he got to serve Christ. If he died, he got to be with Christ. For him, it was a total win-win. And that's what completely disconnected his inner joy from whatever was happening to him on the outside.
He actually lays it all out like an accountant's balance sheet. In his old life, you could say his resume was packed with assets. His elite heritage, his top-tier religious status, his perfect record of following the rules. But after his life got totally recentered, he did this radical accounting. He took all those things he used to be proud of and moved them over to the loss column. Why? Because his new purpose column only had one thing in it, repeated over and over for emphasis, just knowing Christ.
This is his bottom line, his summary statement. It's basically a declaration that this one thing had become so incredibly valuable to him that everything else, whether it was good or bad, just faded in comparison. That was the source of his unshakable joy.
But Paul doesn't stop there. He doesn't just explain the source of joy. He gives a really practical blueprint for how to experience the peace that goes along with it. He says the key is to have the mind of Christ. So what does that look like? Well, it starts with humility, actually thinking of other people as more important than yourself. Then that flows into servanthood, actively looking for ways to help people. And it's all rooted in obedience. For Paul, this way of thinking was the ultimate antidote to the conflict and selfishness that just robs us of our peace.
And he boils that mindset down into a clear 3-step formula for beating anxiety. First, instead of worrying, pray about everything. Second, instead of fixating on what's wrong, give thanks in every situation. And finally, and this is crucial, you have to actively direct your thoughts.
So what should you focus on? Paul even gives a checklist. Fill your mind with whatever is true, what's noble, what's right, pure, and lovely. He totally understood that what we choose to focus on really shapes our reality. Anxiety just thrives when we dwell on the negative. But peace? Peace is something we cultivate by intentionally focusing on the good.
And this all leads to his final major point, which includes one of the most famous and probably one of the most misunderstood verses in the entire Bible. Now, I'm sure you've seen this verse, right? It's everywhere, on posters, in locker rooms, you name it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's almost always used as this motivational slogan for crushing your goals. But the original context, it's actually completely different. And honestly, it's way more profound.
See, Paul wasn't talking about winning a championship or acing a final exam. He was talking about contentment. The all things he could do was find satisfaction whether he was starving or had a full belly, whether he was in need or had more than enough. So the real point here is it's not about having the power to achieve anything you want, but about having the strength to be content in any situation you find yourself in.
And this brings us right back to the central message of the whole letter. If your joy is built on your circumstances, it's going to be totally unreliable. If it's built on your comfort level, it's going to be constantly changing. But, Paul argues, if your joy is built on a single, unwavering purpose, it can be constant.
So, if we had to boil this entire powerful letter down to just one sentence, it would be this. True, lasting joy is not a product of your circumstances, it's a result of your focus. Which leaves us with a final question to really chew on. What if the secret to contentment isn't this lifelong, exhausting struggle to change everything around us, but instead it's about the internal discipline of just changing our focus?
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us.